Yes, it's coming round to that time of year again when our screens are filled with the adverts inviting us to buy this, that, and the other. Back in the day, it was just the paper and ITV that had them, which brings me on to football, which didn't take long today. The cup final was shown simultaneously on BBC and ITV. We watched it on BBC, of course, but at some stage of the match we would always turn over to ITV, just briefly, to prove that we'd made the right decision. Oh no, we'd say, the picture quality is poor and there's adverts. If something was of inferior quality, we'd say it was a bit ITV. This could be applied to all sorts of avenues in life. So it is with a heavy heart when I say that this church, Goodwood, has something in common with ITV. Both started broadcasting in the autumn of 1955. On the 22nd of September of that year, ITV launched commercial television, firstly in London and then to the rest of the nation. For me, not that I was there at the start, everything about it was inferior, from the aforementioned football coverage to children's TV growing up in the 70s. The BBC had multicoloured Swap Shop, which I enjoyed, whereas ITV had Tiswas, which I thought was very silly. The BBC had Blue Peter, which I watched, when ITV had Magpie, which I didn't. And so it went on. Royal weddings, elections. The thought of watching these on ITV never occurred to us. I think I was impressed when my cousin made an appearance on Anglia TV's programme for preschoolers, Romper Room, but I quickly came to my senses. But from late November, ITV, it could be argued, came into its own, because the Christmas adverts could be more interesting than the programmes that followed. The best one was the Woolworths ad, a legendary part of the run-up to Christmas, in the same way that the John Lewis ones would become in later years. Famously long, they were a pick and mix, in more ways than one, of everything you liked about the festive season as a child, from fairy lights to selection boxes, books, records, board games, and just about anything else. No wonder they took 2 minutes, which is about as long as this introduction and probably more entertaining. And it's adverts we're thinking about today. For nearer to AD 55 than 1955, the Apostle Paul wrote these words to the church in Corinth. We are Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. In the Roman world, ambassadors were official representatives sent by a sovereign to convey messages and negotiate on behalf of their ruler. In the school world, when you go on a trip, you're told in that little pep talk before you get on the coach that you're representing the school, and if that trip went abroad, the country, which was unfortunate in my case when we went to a cheese farm in the Netherlands. At the end of what must have been the most nauseating part of the trip, we all had to queue up for a piece of cheese. When it was my turn, I said, "No, thank you," to which she indignantly replied, "You will have it," or some Dutch equivalent. So I took it, and then when she wasn't looking, put it into my pocket, which wasn't good for my jeans or for those around me. Anyway, I digress. Our question today is this: how can we be a good advert for Christ? I've got the obligatory 3 answers to that. We're a good advert when Jesus' lordship shows through us, when Jesus' light shines through us, and when Jesus' love speaks through us. So let's take the first of those. We're a good advert when Jesus' lordship shows through us. The words Jesus Christ is Lord have been on the wall behind the pulpit at Goodwood for as long as I can remember. I don't know if they were always there. I'm sure someone will tell me that. But they're certainly a visual aid I've often referred to. And if he really is in our own lives, we're saying we're serious about following him. And the Lord is saying we're his. For as Paul said to the Romans, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. If you've taken that step, you're a Christian. And if you tell someone else, you're an advert, or an ambassador for Christ. Whether you're a good advert or not remains to be seen, but he can help you with that. For when you put him as Lord, he'll help you with the words. He'll give you the words to say, and what's more, they'll be the right words for any given situation. I remember the morning after I became a Christian, aged nearly 10, I was in the queue for the bus to take us swimming. I said to the person next to me, I was consecrated last night, which wasn't received with the joy I was clearly displaying. Fast forward 30 years to when I was taking school assemblies and not in them, as a child, I would say, "Who's ready?" And then, if I needed to, "Show me you're ready." The Lord knows if we're ready to follow him. But if we want to be a good advert, we need to show him we're ready. And if we do that, then others will notice. At this point, I Googled what makes a good advert, and the result would be an interesting illustration in itself. As you can imagine, there were lots of results. So I clicked on Grow Your Business with TikTok Ads. It wasn't long before I was invited to create an account. And with a further click, I'll be able to get over £4,000 credit for a new account. So I thought maybe I'll look somewhere else before I sign up for something I wasn't intending to. I won't reach anyone on TikTok if I'm not committed to signing up. And we won't reach anyone for Jesus if we're not prepared to commit ourselves to him. That will not be easy, but then he never said it would be. What God will do, though, if we commit to him as Lord of our lives, is help us to be the kind of adverts he intended us to be. If Jesus really is Lord of our lives, then other people will notice that in the way we behave and in what we say. If others can see that we're serious about our faith, they might take our faith seriously. Let's move on. We're good adverts when Jesus' light shines through us. Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden." When we went to the Netherlands with the school, the bus driver didn't have to negotiate any hills. But when Paula and I went to Israel with each other, there were plenty of them. I will always remember leaving Jerusalem at dusk and seeing the lights of the city. You couldn't miss them. It was a sight to behold on the trip. And when Jesus' light shines through us, then we're good adverts for him. The week I wrote this, there was a harvest moon, with some pretty amazing pictures of it on social media. Moonlight, as you probably know, is sunlight that is reflected off the surface of the moon, allowing us to see its glow during the night. The moon does not produce its own light. Instead, it reflects the light of the sun. There is something very beautiful about this, which attracts those who see it. After all, when someone says, "Look at the moon," they're not saying, "That's awful." They're saying, "That's beautiful." And in the same way, we're a good advert for Christ when others look at us and see that we're reflecting the light of the Son of God. If you go back a chapter from our text for today, you come to one of my favourite verses, 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 6. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. The whole point of an advert, without stating the obvious, is that you want those receiving it to know about the product and then buy it. Take holidays. I like to whenever I can. If you're taking a photo to advertise a break in Cornwall, you're not going to pick a day when it's tipping it down in Truro, which it was actually the last time we went. You'll take your picture of a sunny day in St Ives, reflecting those famous white sands. Others hedge their bets and say, "Come to our attraction, whatever the weather." I can tell you that some of them work better than others when the sea mist is rolling in. But the point I'm making is that when there's light, there's hope of a good holiday. And when we show the light of Christ in our lives, then that's a better advert than if we've got a face longer than a West Country pier. And so we've seen that we're a good advert when Jesus' lordship shows through us, and when Jesus' light shines through us. Thirdly and finally, we're a good advert when Jesus' love speaks through us. For 26 of the last 70 years, I've sung Jesus' Love is Very Wonderful at the Ark with those who come along. And for a number of years before I turned up, others who served the Lord faithfully in this place did it too. But before the Ark, even further back than when it started as Mums and Tots, I remember a line from an old LP we listened to over Sunday lunch, one of those spiritual records we played on the Sabbath. It said, "You know it's something, but when you use a word too much, its meaning dies away." I can't remember the artist or the song, and please resist the temptation to Google it until at least I've finished. But the love of God is something we rightly talk about so much, and I've seen demonstrated by this church family in countless ways over the years. Let's make sure in doing that, the meaning of God's love doesn't die away, but is an advert that draws others to Him. You are the best publicity. If I told you I carried out my job as publicity secretary in the Christian Union at college with flair and style, Paula would counter that with the truth. There we were, in a practice room in the bowels of the college. Does anyone know where we're meeting? No, they didn't, because the publicity secretary hadn't put his hastily scribbled and probably illegible note on a sheet of paper on the notice board. To this day, it's obvious that my degree is in music, not graphic design. I loved Rachmaninoff. I spent 6 hours a day practicing his work so that others knew it at my final recital. And if we love Jesus and want to be a good advert for him, that needs to be worked out in a lifelong commitment. I see that here in the church, with all the hard work that goes into making it happen. This anniversary occasion is a good time to thank everyone for their demonstration of love for the Lord they serve, in all sorts of ways behind the scenes. The early church, the description not of those who turned up before 11 a.m., but of first century Christians, didn't always get it right in this respect. A visit to the church at Corinth that Paul wrote to in this letter might have led you to say, "See how they loathe one another," given the division that spoiled it. But when the church put into practice Jesus' command to love one another, that was the advert that drew others to them, and more importantly, to the Lord they served. "See how they love one another" was a famous quote in the early church, and by God's grace, it remains a good advert in the present one. We are Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer for the work he has called us to be his adverts in the world around us, when Jesus' lordship shows through us, his light shines through us, and his love speaks through us. May we be those who draw others to our wonderful Saviour, and by God's grace continue to be the light on the hill he has called us to be. Amen.